Welcome everyone to episode 1 of season 2 of the Booster Riding God King podcast. Now I'm sure you've missed us all.
This will be episode 0.
All right. Hold up. Recalculating, rebooting. Welcome everyone to episode 0, the pilot episode of season 2 of the Booster Riding God King podcast. I'm sure you missed us all in our 15-year hiatus, but we're back, all right? And we're better than ever, having another meta episode similar to season 1. I'm here with Adam currently. Say hello, Adam.
Hello.
Adam's had a bit of an accident recently. His voice got kind of disfigured because, he had a nice chop to the vocal
15 years.
Exactly. So, we decided that for this episode and for the pilot episodes for each season, we're just going to discuss what's going to happen during the season. And for this upcoming season, we figured that instead of talking about the Booster path, because we covered everything that's in it, we would talk about more philosophical things. Examples are the trolley problem, a bunch of thought experiments similar to the trolley problem, and more conceptual-based things. And as the seasons progress, each season will have kind of an overarching theme to it. So for this season, it's going to be philosophy, introspection, and thought, essentially.
We're going to be presenting different philosophical questions that have been asked throughout, millennia, and talking about them ourselves, relating them to modern philosophy and especially our own philosophies.
Which should be pretty cool and interesting. And the reason that we decided to keep this episode kind of unstructured and not very polished is because I personally, my online personality, I like to have it be as close to identical to raw, as close to my real life personality as possible, which is why, like, when I post pictures of myself, I post videos, like, I don't take like 300 selfies and then post the best looking selfie. Like, I'm like, whatever, fuck it, it's good enough. And I talk to people online like I talk to people in person. When I stream on Twitch, like, I don't give a fuck if I look like shit, if my hair looks like shit, if everything looks like shit. I'm like, you know what? I'm a human. Sometimes I look like shit, all right? Deal with it, right?
It's funny. That's the exact opposite of how I used to approach the internet. I used to think about the facade I have to put on to be, a better person. Not in terms of like a better person, like, oh, I'm such a good person, but just like, superior. You gotta, when you're online, you gotta prove your worth.
Yeah, and I'm the opposite. I'm like, I don't give a fuck, right? It's like, whatever. This is me in the raw. Deal with it, basically. And
yeah,
that's the reason I want to keep this episode so unpolished, is because I want anybody listening who is sitting there like, man, I want to have my own podcast about knitting, but like, oh, I'm just a weak, pathetic weasel. There's no way I could start a podcast. Well,
yikes,
we're all
Chris.
Fucking weak, pathetic weasels too.
No,
okay?
don't
We're
make fun of the
human
weasels.
beings. Oh, sorry, weasels. All right. Mad respect to all you weasels out there. You're very crafty.
We represent the weasels.
Cleverness. It takes some cleverness to be a weasel, snake around like that. But
big brain weasels.
Anyway, for anybody listening that has decided like, oh, maybe I want to do a podcast, or maybe I want to do my own YouTube series or whatever, and they're kind of sitting on the fence, right? I want to kind of indicate to them that, like, look, you don't have to be there's no quality that differentiates, those people who have popular podcasts and everybody else. We're all human beings, right? It's just a matter of actively doing it, making the decision to do it, and having the dedication to try, right? So this, the first episode here, it's unpolished to kind of indicate to you guys, look, anybody can start a podcast if you really feel up to it and you have something that you feel is worth talking about. So
yeah, it's up to you. It's not up to the people watching your podcast to make a podcast. It's up to you as the podcaster to make a podcast. Very, of course, that's very straightforward. Everyone knows that.
Yes, and that's basically why we're keeping in the raw. So, Adam, what are some of the things that you think we should cover besides we had the trolley problem, and then we had I forgot, it's like Theseus
I
ship
went a
or
different
something like that.
direction. I went a different direction in terms of my topics. I didn't want to talk about strictly philosophical questions that have been raised and became popular through, debate. Instead, I wanted to talk about modern issues and then relate them to old philosophy. So I wanted to talk about, the bipartisan war going on between the American political system, talk about the philosophy of each side, how there's religion involved and different areas of the world affect different people's viewpoints.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, one of the things that I want to definitely talk about during this season, because it's very relevant to the current times and it's a very hot topic, is abortion, because that's something that we could argue
Yeah.
both sides and really
That's
delve in
actually,
deep, you know?
I wanted to really strictly talk about how the geographical location of people affects their viewpoints. People from the South are affected by their heritage, and people who live in the Midwest are separated from bustling cities, and how that can affect our philosophies.
So let's kind of leap into that. That should settle it for anybody listening about what season 2 is going to be about. You know, philosophical points, introspecting into current events, but from a philosophical perspective, like really breaking down the morality of different issues and the perspective of different issues in our current society, along with just more
Yeah,
theoretical conversations. Right.
this won't just be us talking about the philosophies, it'll also be us learning about them ourselves, adjusting our own philosophies to understand them.
Yeah. So in the meantime, while
Well, I've got a
oh
good
shit,
question.
oh shit, intruder
e-
alert, Nanny the
everyone
fuck.
on high alert, please. We have a guest in the building, a VIP, a fellow host.
Daniel
Welcome,
has
Daniel.
entered the chat.
I think he's a little scared, but it's okay.
Can you hear me?
There you
Holy
are.
shit. He's there. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. My friend's in the.
Are you on your phone, Daniel? Daniel, your connection's really piss poor.
Uh,
Robot
Wow, those are some
Daniel.
wise words from Daniel. What are your thoughts on what Daniel said, Adam?
Well, frankly, I didn't even understand it. It was over my head. I'm just sitting here at 200 IQ, and Daniel's at 2,000.
Yeah, man, I couldn't even process. Like my brain, it was like, whoa, did Daniel just speak? Right? Just
No,
absolutely
but
no processing.
nothing. You can't understand those words. It's impossible. Beyond us.
Is this what they felt like when divine beings talked to humans way long
This
ago?
is literally what the Buddha heard.
Oh my god, everything makes sense.
This is how they made the pyramids.
So while Daniel figures his situation out, Adam,
I actually had a good question to ask us.
what's up?
I wanted all of us to establish our own definitions of philosophy, and specifically how our own philosophies work. Of course, it's going to be kind of hard to separate them from all the things we went over in the previous season regarding the Busa path. Like the Busa path essentially is a philosophical guide to yourself, but I wanted to, when we're talking about philosophy and talking about our own philosophies, I want us to have established a baseline of what we mean individually.
Okay, to me it's actually kind of simple. I just consider philosophy it's weird. It's like the art of thinking in a way. It's it's a combination of your belief system, which includes like your morals, right? And then the way you think about things and the amount of perspectives that you consider in general as you move through life. And that's basically how I consider philosophy. It's a way
Yeah,
of thinking, a mentality, right?
that's scarily similar to mine as well, which is like a duo. My philosophy is the result of the war between my logical reasoning and my intuition.
Yeah, that makes sense. 'Cause you're constantly at battle between your emotions and your
In my
logic.
mind, yeah. And that battle is what ends up in my philosophy. Whatever the result of that battle is my philosophy. And of course, morals come from both sides as well. I have intuitive morals, but I also have like logical morals that I've developed through experience.
Speaking on that battle, there's a quote by Anthony Bourdain, which is, "There's a guy in my head, and all he wants to do is lay in bed all day long, smoke pot, and watch old movies and cartoons. My life is a series of stratagems to avoid and outwit that guy." And I think that's very relevant
Christopher,
in general.
I think it's pronounced stratagems. Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, I pronounced it the way I pronounced it.
Sorry, I thought I fixed my voice.
Pronunciated it the way I pronunciated it. All right, so leave me alone.
I'm
and I
triggered.
think that's definitely something that is important to realize, is that your intuition, your instinct, your emotional side, and and the logical thing to do might be completely different, right? Your emotions at some point, might push you to fucking throw someone out of a window. Your emotions, you might be so pissed at someone, you're like, fuck this guy, I'm gonna push him out the window, right? Logically, that's not a good idea. That's not a good move, right? So there are times when you have to really focus on understanding that your
Well,
initial instinct is something,
now
right?
you're talking about what we talked about in the previous season, which is like defining your like the proper morals and making sure you control yourself. But really, what we should be talking about is like what happens when you reach these balanced conclusions. If you manage to define Daniel, can you like go outside or something and get better service? Because you're typing to us, but like we can't. How do we bring that into play?
He's typing to you.
Yeah, in the Boostacast chat. You see it?
Yeah, I see it. So anyway, basically, it's important to have a good philosophy or a good mindset about yourself. And in this podcast season specifically, um, I just want to highlight as many perspectives as possible when it comes to certain issues. Like I don't intend to tell people what to do. Like let's say when we talk about abortion, right? I don't intend that we finish the episode and we've conclusively been like, all right, everybody should be pro-choice because X, Y, Z, or everybody should be pro-life because X, Y, Z, right? It's more of a, hey, these are all the perspectives that we could come up with, and as we talk and bounce ideas off each other, we're gonna come up with a bunch of different points,
Right.
discussing morality, and that's kind of what I want this season to be about. Is
Morality.
shining
Okay.
is morality and mentality, and then the perspective really is that the three of us are going to be able to provide a wide variety of perspectives on the topics that we discuss and really delve deep into why certain things are the way they are and how
Right.
maybe we think from our perspective they should be.
And to add more to our definition, we were just defining our own self philosophies, but those are not to be confused with real philosophy, which is in a literal sense just the study of the universe. So when we're talking about our own philosophies, it's kind of like the study of ourselves, like how we view ourselves introspectively and how our choices are made. Because what are we other than a culmination of choices made over time?
Exactly.
So, Daniel, can you get an ETA of when you can like actually join us? I see. You can't spare like 15 minutes? Because this is going to be a short one. We just need to talk about the things we plan, like the things we want to talk about in the season, and that's it. As well as have you define your own, self philosophy. You can take 15 minutes away from them. I mean, I understand that. Your choice. All right. Well, I mean, stay and listen then. Do you want to go ahead and just write out quickly, some things you want us to say in your behalf? All right, you'll just say your piece on the next episode then. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'm capable of replicating you in any way, so. Of course, Daniel. You don't need to thank me. So, Chris, do you want to open with like one of the two problems, like the trolley problem, and then just talk about it as an example, or do you want to just like continue as we're going and kind of finish up quick and just be like, expect different questions if you want, maybe if you have any philosophical questions of your own, like tweet them at Chris or something.
No, I think that we can leave those for when we have Daniel in the podcast, because they'll become more full episodes, right? Like talking about the trolley problem, or talking about Theseus ship principle, or talking about abortion, right, or whatever the hell we end up talking about. I'm trying to remember something. I was thinking about, I wanted to ask you a question so we could have like a mini discussion.
Right. That's what I wanted out of this, is like a trial discussion.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I had just thought of something right now as you were talking to Daniel, and then I just kind of lost it.
Do you want to talk about like it's hard to separate philosophy from morality. Like philosophy's like the difference is philosophy is very wide, right? So it's hard to apply the word philosophy to something specific.
Sure, but there's discussions we can have that encompass different aspects of it, right? So we just need to think of. I had a fucking question, like some theoretical question that I wanted to see your perspective on it, and I completely lost it. And that's basically all we need to talk about it, right?
Take your time.
It wasn't abortion, but let me see if I can figure it out.
Yeah, knowing you, that's like
okay, I got you. All right, I can't remember what it is, but I got one that is I wanted to ask you that was interesting. So, okay.
I was just about to say it's impossible for you to forget something.
I know you always try to like get me off track. All right. So look, let's say that you have two guys. Okay, we have guy A and guy B. All right. They're both in relationships. Okay. In faithful, heterosexual, non-monogamous relationships.
Are they married?
Sure, let's go with that. They're married. They're in a heterosexual relationship. They're married. Okay, now guy A, right, constantly feels the desire to cheat, right? Like when he goes out with his friends and he runs into girls and like they're talking and having a good time, he constantly feels the desire to cheat, but he never does it. Now, guy B never feels the desire to cheat and therefore obviously never cheats. Which guy is more faithful? Which guy is more faithful in that scenario? And do you think they both love the other human being?
It's not an easy question given how much data I have. But assuming what you've given me, they're both equally faithful to their own married relationship, because neither of them have cheated or broken the vows that they took to their spouses. But it's clear that the man who always wants to cheat isn't respecting. I mean, assuming the wife doesn't want him to cheat, he's not respecting her will. You know, he clearly isn't able to correct that part of himself to compensate for his wife, right? I'm not going to blame a guy for wanting to have sex with girls. You know, like it's literally a part of our human instinct. And, you know, congratulations to him to also having the willpower to not cheat. But it's clear that he, you know, but once again, this is assuming his wife, you know, clearly doesn't want him to cheat, which is typically the case. Then he lacks the willpower to correct that part of himself. So he's not as dedicated to her.
Mm-hmm. So this comes from a question of morality, which is interesting, which is if somebody doesn't have the capacity to do bad, right? Never like just does not have the capacity to do anything malicious or bad or evil or destructive or anything like that. They just don't have the capacity. They're actually unable to. They never think about it, and they're actually unable to. Are they better than somebody who does have the capacity to do those things and chooses not to? Because that stems from this whole Adam and Eve shit, where once they ate the apple and
Right.
understood the sin of
How
man, right? They were able
you
to
view
do.
people is determined by two things: the how you've like the things you've seen them do, and the things you think they'll do. Your version of themselves in your mind, and the things that you've witnessed. Those two things culminate into your view of a person. And saying that, like, I don't think that either of those people that you mentioned, one who has the power to do it and doesn't, and one who just doesn't do it, both of them are viewed very, very equally in that sense. But if you know the person who has the power to change and control themselves, if you know them and you know they have this power, then you will view them differently than the other person. You will view them as superior to the other person, even though their actions are equal.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why. I'll give you an example, right? When it comes to like a love situation, right? Let's say I'm dating this girl, Stacy, right? And we're in a monogamous relationship, right? And I don't cheat on Stacy. It's like sweet, you know. Everyone thinks that's a great act. You know, it's fantastic, and Stacy's gonna feel really great about the fact that I haven't cheated on her. Like, let's say she hooks me up to a polygraph. It's been 5 years we've been dating. She's like, "Have you cheated on me?" And I say no, and it's accurate. And then she's gonna feel all warm and fuzzy and whatever, right? So here's the thing: even if I felt the desire to cheat, like let's say there's some really hot girl and like Stacy's in another fucking country and I'm hanging out and I'm a little drunk or something, and like, you know, I have the biological reaction of, wow, I really want to slam this girl, right? And then I don't do it anyway. It's like, all right, everybody's going to give me props for that, you know? Being faith, everybody's going to give somebody props for being faithful and having the willpower to be respectful of your partner and stay within your lane and all this kind of stuff. And Stacy's obviously going to feel great about that, right? If she found out that like someone tried to seduce me and I turned her away, like let's say she hires someone to try to seduce me while she's away on her trip because she has some fucking insecurity issue, and she does so, and then I turn that person away, she's going to feel great, right? But now imagine if Stacy and I aren't dating, right? Like we're two friends and we happen to sleep with each other, and let's say we fall in love, right?
Can we repeat this question but with a slightly different like base? I want to ask.
Yeah, but hold up.
Well, I want to go over this exact question, but I want you to re-ask it from the perspective of a wife to a military officer. It's like her husband's away from military. And
yeah, but hold up, because that's not going to work exactly for the example. So,
sorry.
Let's say it's in the same. Let's say it's in the same instance. I'm with this girl Stacy, right? And we kind of fall in love with each other, but for whatever reason, we decide not to be in a relationship together. Like we don't want to be in a monogamous relationship, so we leave it open ended. Like we're just friends. We're not even dating. Like if somebody asks me, "Are you Stacy's boyfriend?" I'm like, "No," right? I'm single. I'm a free spirit, right? And she answers the same thing, right? So we're totally free, but we're like head over heels in love with each other. We love spending time with each other. Everything's fucking awesome, whatever. And we're banging, right? Now, let's say with the entire world open to me, right? I can bang any girl I want. There's no restriction on me. I'm not in a monogamous relationship, right? In the second situation with Stacy, I'm just her friend. I have no obligation to stay faithful because even if I bang someone else, I'm still faithful because we're just friends. At no point in time did we instill some sort of contract or agreement of exclusivity, right? How much more loved do you think Stacy will feel, or how much more powerful or happy or whatever word you want to use do you think she's going to feel in that situation if I actively choose to only bang Stacy, even with all the limiters unengaged, right? It's like if you gave if let's say in the military example you just gave me, there's the military officer and the wife, right?
There's a different perspective to that as well, which is would Stacy even want that? Would she want you to choose to only bang her? Because, depending on the reason, it could infringe on the peaceful relationship you have already. It could, to her, that means that you're taking it more seriously than she is, and she knows that she's going to have to end it soon.
That's not necessarily true, though.
No, it's not. But that's what I'm saying is she could also take it as like, you could say, Stacy's the best sex I've ever had, so I'm just only gonna have sex with her, and then she might accept that as a reason. So like the question really comes as to the conversation going on between you two and the relationship you have.
Yeah. So I'm gonna relate this to the example of the military officer, right?
I'm going to cut out my interruption about the military officer. So just phrase the question on your own. Relate it to that on your own.
Okay. So I'm gonna jump into another part related to this. I'm gonna frame it in a slightly different way. It's more like this. Imagine you have a husband and a wife, and they're totally faithful and they're loving and whatever, right? And then imagine the husband goes on a 1-month trip to another country, right? And the wife tells him, "You know what, honey? When you're on this 1-month trip, go ahead and you can do whatever you want. Like all the bounds of our marriage are just gone when you're on this 1-month trip. Like I'll stay faithful. I'm not going to do anything. I'll be at home doing my own thing. But like you go off, you have fun. Like it's been your dream since you were a child to go visit this country. And I don't want my presence to hold you back. I don't want the bounds of this marriage to hold you back because I love you. I just want you to be happy. I want you to do everything that you want to do and be free."
Damn, that's a good wife.
Yeah. So let's say she says that, right? And he goes off on his trip and he comes back from his trip and he did not sleep with a single other person when he was on the trip, right? Because he didn't even have the desire to sleep with the other people because he's in love with his wife, right? You imagine that the wife is going to feel elated about that, right? Because most other husbands, let's say, would probably have slept with somebody while they're on the trip, right? And it's going to feel rather impactful that with no restrictions, the husband chose to not sleep with anybody, right? And I know a lot of people listening are going to be like, well, if my wife said that, I would not sleep with anybody because that's a fucking trap. And to a lot of people, you're correct. So let's take this out of the bounds of a relationship, just in general.
Well, are you certain that most people would want to cheat at all times?
No. I'm not saying that most people would want to cheat. I'm just saying that people listening to this that, let's say, would want to, maybe they got married young and they've only had like 2 sexual partners, and like they kind of feel bummed because their wife is some vanilla shit or their husband is some vanilla shit. They wanted to let out their kinky side a little and their partner is not really willing, or whatever the fuck the case may be. People are in all kinds of weird situations. Maybe they wanted to explore more or whatever.
Right, I get it.
Given the option, they probably would, right? But I mean, look, plenty of people fucking cheat, all right? All the time. It's rampant. And they're in, let's say, normal, healthy relationships some of the time. And some of the time they're not. That's why they cheat. There's some aspect of their partner that they need to get some stimulation from somebody else. Their partner stops sleeping with them for a year, right? People are going to get fucking antsy. People are going to start not being not feeling particularly good in that kind of a relationship, like dead bedrooms, all that kind of stuff. That's usually what'll lead to cheating on the men's side of thing, right? And then on the women's side of thing, again, these are generalizations, but it's like an emotional thing, right? If their partners, if there's a woman in a relationship and their husband isn't there for them emotionally, right, they tend to seek out somebody else for emotional comfort. And if it so happens that they emotionally connect with a guy, that can tend to lead towards, let's say, some kind of cheating instance. Now, I'm not saying that everybody wants to cheat. And the reason I want to pull it out of the relationship scenario is because, yeah, a lot of people are right. Like if your fucking girlfriend goes to you and goes, oh yeah, go ahead, like, and I find this a sign of immaturity, but I know people do this anyway on both sides of the coin, male, female, it doesn't fucking matter. 2 guys, 2 girls, whatever, where you ask your partner, hey, is it okay if I blah? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. Do whatever you want, right? Which are the token words of, if you do that, I'm going to be so fucking pissed at you, you piece of filth, right? Why did you even suggest that, right? So let me pull it out of the bounds of relationship. Let's say it's in a moment of let's say I take you under my wing, Adam. Let's say you were a kid. You're like a little child. You're 15, let's say, and I take you under my wing. I adopt you. You're in the foster care thing, and I adopt you as my child, whatever. You're 16, you're 17, right? And then I tell you, like, all right, the only rule I have in this household is you can't do drugs or drink, right? That's the only rule I have in this household, right? Now, okay, let's say you follow that because the threat is, if you do that, I'm going to put you back into the foster program, right? Like, let's say, and it might not be that I actually threatened you with that. You might just have that perceived threat. You might correctly or incorrectly assume that, oh, he's saying if I do that, I'm fucked. Like, he's going to kick me out or he's going to stop taking care of me. Like, there's some kind of implicit realization when someone sets a rule or a boundary. Generally, there's an implied connotation that there's going to be some repercussion to that, right? Let's say you're in public, there's a guy getting in your face, and you go, hey man, don't touch me again, right? And you say it sternly. There's a pretty big implication that if the guy touches you again, you're going to do something about it. What you're going to do, that depends on the person. But in that sense, you'd have some sort of implication that, Adam, if you did drugs or drank, you'd be fucked, okay? Now, let's say I take that restriction away from you. I'm like, you know what, Adam, do whatever you want, right? And you know it's not a trap. Like, I'm genuinely telling you, do whatever you want. And you choose not to do those things anyway, out of respect for me. It's going to feel a whole lot better for me, like for the father figure in that scenario, because it's showing that like your son is respecting you and understanding that you put that boundary there initially for a reason, and that even though the restriction is gone, you still chose to follow it simply for my case, let's say, because let's say you personally have the opinion of, drinking's not that bad. I can drink every once in a while, whatever, but you don't do it out of the respect of your parental unit, let's say, right? It holds a whole different kind of weight when you're forced to do something versus when you do something completely out of your own desire.
So what's my question here?
My question is, when it comes to our society and the restrictions we have in place in general, right? Do you think that people who do things out of a societal norm or a fear, let's say, of being viewed a certain way aren't necessarily being true to themselves? They feel kind of empty?
That's a tough question. When you make a choice by weighing repercussions, that's always a balance between what you need and what you want. And if you're trying to figure out, if you need something, if you need to do something or get something that requires breaking rules, then at that point it's a matter of how badly do you need it or how badly do you want it. You said this kid is, thinking, oh, I like drinking, but I don't need it. But what if he was thinking, I need drinking? If I'm not drunk every day, then I feel like garbage and want to kill myself, right? Then that kid might, not care about the consequences.
Yeah, and he might go against the father figure and then face whatever consequences there, right? For example, let's say you have two star-crossed lovers and but they're children. Let's say they're 16 and they live in each other, like they live in their parents' houses, right? And one of their parents is like, you can't leave the house to go see her, for whatever reason. She's a bad influence or whatever bullshit, right? And then without giving a shit about the repercussion, because he wants to see the girl so badly, the lover just leaves his house and sees the girl, because to him seeing the girl is worth whatever repercussion he's going to face, right? And that's the same drinking instance. It's similar. Now, what does that speak to when people decide not to do something, even when their desires to do that thing are extremely strong, right? Um, but they choose to, out of some, like with no restriction, they choose to out of some other need, like respect for the person or whatever the case may be. I don't know exactly how to phrase that, but when they override their own inherent desires out of some external need, either to show someone how much they care or to have respect for somebody else.
So how do you want to close this up? Because this is going to be a short episode, right?
Yeah. Um, let's have a mini discussion really quick about normal.
What it means to be normal.
No, so I was going to say, I'll lead into it. So going off of what I just said, I think something that is important to understand, especially when it comes to you have one guy who has the desire to cheat and doesn't, and one guy who doesn't have the desire to cheat, but since their actions are equivalent, the perceptions of them in their lover's mind is the same, let's say, or in external people's minds are the same. But if they got a view into the person's head, they might be different, right? People might like scorn the guy for having the instinct to cheat or whatever. I think that all stems off of a line drawn, especially in society, between what is acceptable or normal and what is unacceptable or weird, right? And I think that's something that is very strange, because a lot of what I consider normal to other people isn't normal, right? I think that each person's own individual experience in life determines what is normal.
Can you repeat that?
Oh, that everybody's experience in life determines what is normal. Like whatever you go through from when you're born
Right.
to whatever age you're at
I
right
see what you're
now
saying.
determines what is quote unquote normal for you because you're used to it, right? It's
Yeah,
only
the
it's only
culmination
the
and the
yeah,
average of your experience is what determines your opinion of normal.
correct. And society and society's reactions to things, that's why there's like a societal norm, which is different than, let's say, a standard person's normal, right?
All right. Well, that's just it's still the same concept. You're observing the society's reaction to things, which helps you also determine that separate societal norm.
And going off of that, that's where I think a lot of communication becomes flawed because we all have different standards of normal. And not only do we have different standards of normal, we all have different standards, especially in textual communication, of how we read certain things, right? Like, I can text you something and I can text somebody else something, well, the exact same sentence, and you might take it exactly as it is, 100% objectively for the dictionary definition of each word, and this other person I text might like read some sort of intention into it or some sort of tone into it that I didn't infuse it with. Like they might think I'm angry because I just wrote an objective sentence, and they might take it as I'm being angry or read into it more so because in their life, the people they're surrounded by, when they send that specific message, they're angry, right? Like, for example, sometimes I'll put periods at the end of my sentence. And sometimes I have people react to that like, oh, are you mad? Or like people react automatically assuming I am mad because I put a period at the end of my sentences in a text message. And it's because apparently other people, when they're mad, do that. And so to me, it's like, no, I'm not mad. I was just writing, like it's sometimes how I write in textual communication. I'm not exactly sure why I do it, but it doesn't necessarily imply I'm mad. And I think that's a differentiation where your norms really affect how you view the world around you. And it's important to gather as many perspectives as possible when you're living your life because it helps you view the world in a different way, and it helps you find more than one path around or through a specific obstacle that lies in your way. And that's part of why I want this season to be about what it's about, to be discussions to enhance people's perspective.
Okay. And really, it's also the question, is it okay to ignore or conform to societal norms?
I personally believe it's okay to ignore most societal norms, assuming you're not breaking the law or harming anyone. That's like my min requirement. Like, don't break the law and don't harm anyone, and or like cause detriment to anybody. And you can safely ignore a lot of societal norms. You know what I mean? You want to be a fucking 6'10", 300-pound jacked guy and wear all pink, go nuts, right? Fuck the societal norm, right? In cases like that, I really don't think it matters. I think only when you're going to break the law, let's say like, you show up to your office naked, right? Like that's something that it's not just a societal norm. It's also embedded in the code of law. And I think aside from those cases, you're pretty good to go, right? As long as you're not causing detriment to other people.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that's my view as well. Don't hurt others, then you can do what you want. I think we should
All right.
wrap this up. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So that's going to conclude this episode of the second
This will
season.
give you guys a hint of, what we're going on. Hopefully Daniel will give his perspective on some of these things next time he's on. So look forward to that as well.
Yep. And again, the intention with this season is just to hopefully enhance everybody who's listening's perspective and obviously through our own discussions, enhance our own perspectives on things going on in society and random moral dilemmas, let's say. Thank you all for listening, and fuck Craig.
Yeah, fuck you, Craig.